So welcome to lesson 9 on ecosystem management, peat bogs. So you need to know the management of environmental resources and the effects of human activities, to include how ecosystems can be managed to balance the conflict between conservation, preservation and human needs in peat bogs. So watch the video and see the main reasons why we need to conserve peat bogs. It's also worth to have a look at the threats and how they're combating these on this video as well. So let's just look into what we're conserving. These are peat bogs. Many were in Ireland and the UK. You don't see them many now in the UK since all the land has been drained from bogs and it's been turned into farmland. Many peat bogs are marshland and they get drained by farmers because they're literally unusable land. So they get drained and get used for farmland, housing, roads, etc. to be made into more constructive land. A peat bog is a wet, spongy area that contains decomposing vegetation. Undisturbed peatland is a carbon sink. However, once dried, it can be used as a fuel, but burning peat releases CO2 into the atmosphere. It takes many thousands of years for peat to form. The preservation of peat bogs is important in helping to prevent further climate change. Peat is made from decomposed plants that sink to the bottom of the bog. The bog is acidic and it's waterlogged, so therefore these conditions stop the decomposition of the plant material. It gets squished and sinks to the bottom and ends up turning into peat. After thousands of years, peat forms, but if this kept on getting buried and after millions of years, this would turn to coal. Peat is also important for farmers and gardeners who mix it with soil to improve soil structure and increase its acidity. Farmers and gardeners use it if they've got specifically alkali soils and they need to neutralise their soils. They add the acidic peat to it to neutralise it, and that's better for some plants. Peat has a good moisture retaining properties and also helps to prevent damage to roots when soil is too wet. Commercial peat extraction to supply gardeners and nurseries is a major threat to this ecosystem, and this is what needs to be sustainably managed. So just to reiterate why peat bogs are endangered. Number one, many of the peat habitats get drained by farmers or for farmland or for manufacturing factories or for housing. So many of the marshland is disappearing. If the marshland disappears, the habitats disappear, there's unique species that live there. Another thing, the peat is getting dug up and it's getting used by gardeners for their compost to neutralise their soils. Commercial peat extraction supplies gardeners and nurseries, but also it supplies some tourist things as well, such as burning peat. As you can see in the photos, these were taken at a gift shop in Scotland. So the peat bog ecosystem, it's a unique ecosystem and it doesn't exist anywhere else. These peatland is composed mainly of wetland vegetation, including mosses, sedges and shrubs, all unique to the peat bog ecosystem. The plants have adapted to grow in wet conditions with few nutrients. Bogs support a wide range of insects such as butterflies and moths. The lack of predators also makes bogs an ideal place for birds to nest and bring up chicks. The abundance of insects, spiders, frogs provide food for many species of birds and other mammals. The large areas of open ground are ideal hunting ground for birds of prey as well. And as you can see, here is a peat bog being dug up for its peat somewhere in Ireland. The black layer in the ground, it would be the peat. And as you can see, it's been buried, and that's what happens. These layers build up on top of each other until the peat sinks to the bottom and is compressed. So next I'm going to talk about the conservation and protection of peat bog ecosystems. Why? Well, lowland raised bogs in the UK are an example of peatland ecosystem diversity, and they've disappeared by over 90% in an area. It's essential to conserve the remaining areas we have to maintain biodiversity, as again, these areas are unique. They have unique species that can live in these marshlands and peat bogs ecosystems, and you don't find them anywhere else in the UK. So it's vital that we protect them. Their maintenance will also contribute to flood management, erosion control, downstream, and carbon storage. So also these are benefits of having peat bog ecosystems. They allow overflow of water into them for flood management, and also act as a carbon store to stop global warming. The greatest decline has occurred due to afforestation, peat extraction, and intensive agriculture, including land drainage, as farmers want to use their land for farming. All these contribute to drying out of the bogs. Afforestation, if you don't know what it is the establishment of a forest or stand of trees in an area where there was no previous tree cover. So again, trees would grow in where the marshland was, and it would dry out, just basically getting rid of the peat bog ecosystem. So again, conservation practices would be cutting down the trees and allowing the peat bog to remain a peat bog. Just a side note, basically many peat bogs all around the world keep finding human remains in these peat bogs. Why have they found them? Well, the peat bog is acidic, and it's the same reason why the peat forms in the first place. Dead plants can't be broken down by fungi and microorganisms due to the acidic properties of the bog. Therefore, things get preserved in there, and that's why this person has been found, and that's due to the acidic nature preserving them. So, conserving lowland bogs. The key to conservation is to restore or maintain water levels. Most bogs are surrounded by ditches to prevent flooding of nearby land. Ditch blocking may be required to raise the water table to the bog surface, and that's what you saw on the video. Ways of preserving these boglands. Removal of tree seedlings helps to maintain water levels, as trees lose a lot of water by transpiration, and they suck it all up and lower the water level. So again, the active conservation management of removing these trees will keep the bog as it is. Controlled grazing maintains biodiversity, again allowing some sheep on there and other mammals to graze the trees. Saplings, again, is a conservation technique, and again keeps the peat bog ecosystem still there, stops it going into woodland. Around 80% of our remaining lowland bogs are in poor condition. The Wildlife Trust and the RSPP are working to maintain a balance between exploiting the land and a biodiverse ecosystem. So that's it, the end of the peat bog lesson. What you need to do now is answer questions on page 310, questions 1 to 3. And if you finish that, you can answer the questions 3 on page 317. If you've also completed that, you can have a go at the peat bog learning mat and by filling it in.